heartbreak for everybody. Unfortunately, I was about 50 feet away from it. And to this day, I won't change my lenses until something actually happens. I normally have, where I was at, I was right next to home plate, right next to our owner's box, which was kind of okay and not okay. And I had this lens on when I was getting ready to shoot. Obviously, hopefully, get ready to jump over and have a celebration and go to the World Series in '92. So I thought, well, if it happens, we get that final out, I'll be ready to go. So I took this lens off, and I put that tiny little lens on. And we all know what happened after that. So to this day, it's kind of like a little bit of a, I don't change my lenses until it happens. So, you know, it's just one of those things in baseball, you know, in sports in general. I've shot 2 Super Bowls with the Steelers. I've been to Stanley Cup with the Penguins. Not for those organizations. I worked for other people at that time. The Steelers, I do game day stuff with the Steelers. They have their own photographer, and myself and 3 other, plus Mike Davis is their photographer. And with Mike as our leader, there's 3 other photographers that cover the field. And the Steelers took us to the Super Bowl twice now. Really, it was every event is a new and exciting process. You never know exactly what's going to happen, whether you're going to lose, obviously. But just to get to those points, battle through the year and get to your championship, whatever it is. Gentlemen here, with the dart championships, you all know you have your ups and downs throughout the season. I mean, you can't win every single event. And right now with the Pirates, we're going through it for the last 17 years. You think it's tough with you guys, fans. I've been an employee for 20 years. It's tough. My job is to make the team look good. So if there's a ball going behind them, I put it in front of them. No, I just eliminate the frame that's the ball behind them, so it's coming to them. But I've met a lot of different people in sports. Been to a lot of different places, and I love the game. I love the events. I love the people that are involved. Some of the players get a bad rap. Some of the players don't get a bad rap. They should, but they're all human. They all have their good days. They all have their bad days. I got to deal with them on every day. So it's like anything else. It's a job. You know, a lot of people say, "Man, you got the greatest job in the world," and I always say, "No, the video guy has the greatest job in the world," because he basically takes a tape, puts it away, and he's done with it. Me, I got to edit, and process, and everything else. He usually goes home and 15, 20 minutes after the game, I'm usually there 2 hours after the game. So it comes down to it. It is a great game. I love the job. I've been doing it for 20 years. If I didn't, I get there at 9:30 in the morning on a game day, and I go home at 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes. Sometimes I go home at 11 o'clock. It just depends. We have our jobs to do in sports. There are some people get a 9-to-5 job out of it. I just happen to get a 9:30 to 1:30 job. Team goes on the road. I'm still over there at 9. That's where my normal day kicks in, 9 to 5. So when the season's over, I get a normal day, 40-hour week. Until then, I get a 60, 80, 90-hour week, depending on what it is. But it's a wonderful job. The guys that are involved, at times, you know, they're the greatest people in the world. They help you with different things. They give you their time. You give them their time. There are other players, obviously, that don't think that they need to do anything other than go out there and play the game. And those guys, you know, you get them on a good day, they're fine. On a bad day, you kind of work around them and you deal with them. And that's probably the same thing in every job. It's that way. Some of the guys will go out of their way to help you. Some of the guys won't. And you deal with it accordingly. And one thing I learned over 20 years is if they're going to be there, you got to be there before them, you got to be there after them. And whenever they do come in, make sure you're ready to go. And that's the best thing. That's the best thing. Those guys love when they can come to a shoot, get their job done, and then get back to what they're doing. And that's one thing that I think a lot of the players know me for, that is when they're coming, they know they're not going to be wasting their time. They'll come in, they shoot, and away they go. Yes. Yes. This is a small sample of 20 years of baseball. There's no football or anything like that. There's just baseball shots. You also make all-star games, some of the early playoffs, some of the players that have treated me well, some of the players haven't treated me well. That's part of the job. Just a play. Good play. Well, that was just a short introduction. Okay. That was just a short introduction of 20 years of photography. One thing, if I would have known that I was going to be a photographer, I didn't start until I was 21 years old. I didn't buy my first camera until I was 21. I was a carpenter, built homes, and then I went back to school. I was taking a picture of a sunset in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I was on vacation with some friends, and came back. A buddy of mine wanted some of the pictures. He got a process, and there was a photographer from New York who wanted to buy him. He called me up. He said, Dave, there's a guy that wants to buy some of your pictures. I said, did you sell them? He goes, no, I want them. No big deal. So I thought at that time there might be something to it. Building homes, I still do a lot of decks and stuff like that. I still do my carpentry that I love. My uncle taught me that years ago. And so I actually got started late in photography. A lot of photographers that I've met were doing it for years. And I got lucky with this job. I went back to school, went back to the University of Pittsburgh, and transferred to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and graduated from there with a degree. And gave myself 6 months to get a job in photography. I was going to go to the Navy. The Navy had an extremely well photography program. Once I got out of school, I started shooting, and I got the Pirates job. It was really weird because the whole thing got set up with my father. Always a lifetime Pirate fan. I started shooting in '89 as an assistant to Peter Diana, who worked for Post Gazette. And the year my father passed away in 1989, and I like to tell this story because it's really it's something that that kind of goes along with my sports. It was 1 year to the day that my dad was brought into the hospital, and I interviewed for the job. He went in with a heart attack, and I interviewed for the job on January 3rd, and he had passed away the year before on January. He had a heart attack on January 23rd, on the 3rd of January, and I interviewed 1 year later for the job, and he passed away February 5th, a month later, and I got the job February 5th. And so Dad's always up there helping me. It's one thing I like to tell everybody that, because you just never know how your life changes. And being a longtime Pirate fan, sports, Penguins, Steelers, obviously, all the sports in Pittsburgh. My father just loved the idea of me shooting for the Pirates, even as an assistant. And he didn't get to see me shoot. He didn't get to know that I ended up being a team Pirate somewhere up there. He definitely does. And it was an experience. It was 1 year changed my whole life. And 20 years later, I'm still shooting for him. And in sports, that's a rarity that you can hang on to a job for 20 years. Every day I thank God that it does happen. I mean, obviously with the way we're playing right now and over the past years, you never know. You never know what the management's thinking. And so far I've done my job. And I tell everybody down there, even, a lot of guys have come to me, with problems with what they're doing there. And I said, well, do your job. Don't give them an opportunity to think that they can let you go. They will if they want to, but don't give them that opportunity. And with sports, you never know what can happen. If I lose this job, you move on. If I lose this job tomorrow, I'll thank them for 20 years and everything they've given me over the 20 years. Will I be happy about it? Obviously not. But over 20 years working for the Pirates, I had so many ups and downs that it's become part of my life with them. And I wasn't really intended to tell you, speak like this for you, but I just think it's one of the things that goes along with sports in general, that you have your good days, you have your bad days, and over the course of the years, you want them the better days to be more than the bad days, and they really have, even though the team has not been successful. So, with going into photography as a full-time position, it's just like any other job. You go to work, you put your time in, you do your best you can, you act professional as you can, and you take it one step at a time. Because as you saw, there's so many different things other than just taking pictures of the players. We have so many different events that you have to cover. You have, your different events that are on Federal Street. There's a number of things that happen every day out there. You have the banquets you got to go to. You have all And usually I'm the last to know, the first one to have to get the stuff done for them. And that's all part of it. So half the time you're running around trying to figure out what they really want. And it's just part of getting the day-to-day stuff done. Spring training is always an interesting situation. We get the one nice perk about this job, you get 4 or 5 weeks on Florida in the middle of winter. And usually it's nice and warm, and you're outside all day long. But those days are always long. And we get up at 6:30 in the morning, and usually don't get done, don't have dinner until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Players, a little bit different. You know, they'll get there at 6:30 in the morning. A lot of people don't think the players get there that early. But they're there at 6:30 in the morning for treatment, for workout, and then they start the regular workout with the team. And then they're there until the end of the game. So there's a lot of hours you put in with sports. Most of the time people ask, what do you do in the off season? That's when you work normally. That's where you work 9 to 5 and to get everything done. Working with the Steelers, I work game day with the Steelers. So I get to go see every game. They pay me to be there, which is pretty nice. I was able to see 2 Super Bowls with them. Been to a number of the AFC Championship games with them. It's thrilling, it really is. And I know everybody here, you know, when they make it into the playoffs, whether it's the Penguins, whether it's the Steelers, whether it's the Pirates, it's when you're on the field and living basically everything out there. It's so neat because you hear the crowd roar. At times you can't even talk to the person next to you. It's so loud, and then you gotta stay concentrated on what you're doing. Any celebrations afterwards? Our first celebration with the Pirates in 1990, we were in St. Louis, and we're running out on the field. Everybody's jumping around. As you saw the one photograph of Doug Drabick, Sid Bream, Jose Lean, and Michael Valier getting ready to jump each other at first base. After that, one of the first persons that came up to me was Andy Van Slyke, and we're running up the tunnel up to the clubhouse. And he kind of pulled me aside and says, Dave, make sure all your stuff's locked up. Take everything you need just to shoot and have a great time. And really, I mean, that was it, because you never know what can happen. Just this past year, in Detroit, the Stanley Cup Finals, one of the photographers I know walked into the Penguins clubhouse after they won, and had a camera stolen. Set it down, put it aside, and had the camera stolen. Someone from the outside was able to get in, saw it, picked it up, and took it. So a little word of advice from Andy Van Slyke, to just settle me down for a minute. It was my first year. Kind of settle me down and say, enjoy yourself, but make sure you have everything put aside before you just get in there and do stuff. So it's just players are, a lot of players are different. It took Andy to come up and say that. A lot of times Andy had a bad rap on some things, but Andy was a character. It was funny that one day we used to have our office at Three River Stadium used to be right behind home plate. So you had 2 tunnels that came in from either side of the dugouts. One went to the visiting clubhouse, one went to the Pirates clubhouse. And myself and Brad Hines was the videographer at the time. We had our office right between it. He had all the video stuff, camera stuff. And the players would come in after the game, sit down, relax, and do whatever. But the one day when Buddy's in, a friend of mine, I taught him how to print black and white. He did all my black and white printing for me. And he was down at the game the one night, so he was waiting to get a ride back home. And so he's sitting down, he's reading a paper, and Andy back at Van Slyke walks in with a little briefcase, and I knew exactly what he was doing. Mike's sitting on the couch, he's got the paper out in front, he's reading. Andy walks in, sets the briefcase right on the paper, walks over, grabs something out of the refrigerator, and sits down. And Mike kind of looks at this briefcase like, what does this guy just do that to me? I'm reading the paper, he sits down on top of the paper. And so Mike didn't say anything. I'm like, okay. So he just went off and he starts reading the paper. We're riding home, and Mike looks at me and he goes, why would he do that? I was reading the paper. I said, we just want to see what kind of reaction he would get from me. He didn't react to it, so he didn't do anything. But Andy was the type of guy where he wanted to get a reaction from you, just to see what you would do. So he would do stuff like that, and And sometimes people took it the wrong way. But after I told Michael, he goes, oh man, I was ready to scream at him, and he just, he just wouldn't do it. But so Andy was that type of character. Jim Gott was one of the nicest guys in the world. I never met him before, and it was like I knew him for years. Jim Leland. Jimmy was the type of guy where, I'll tell you a quick story about Jim Leland. We were getting ready to take a picture of all the pitchers out in the bullpen. It was throwing all the, before they started playing. And so I got everybody lined up, getting ready to take Ray Miller's in the middle of the pack. All the pitchers are up there, ready to take a picture. Got the art director next to me. And all of a sudden, Jimmy comes flying out of nowhere, and he just gets right in my face, starts screaming at me. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? And so Jim, he's screaming at me, he's telling me, you're not supposed to take these pictures off the field, all this stuff back and forth. I mean, he was like right here. And so I said, Jim, sorry, I didn't, and he just turns around and takes off. Ray Miller, Pitt players are all laughing, because they know what's going on. They're just like, this is too funny. So all of a sudden, I get the picture done as quick as I can. Players go back. But what happened was they were supposed to be on the field bunting at the time. So I actually took them off the field. I didn't know it. My boss forgot to tell Jim that the players were going to take a picture. So after all this is all done, the art director looks at me and goes, is there any other way to get out of this ballpark without going through the dugout? And that's what Jim said. So I looked at him and said, yeah, you go out behind the wall, back through the tunnel, and back out the other side. You won't see him at all. But I get back down, I get everything broken down, I get back into the clubhouse, I get back into my office, and Brad Hines, our videographer, gets the phone, rings, he picks it up, and goes, Dave, Jimmy's on the line for you. I'm thinking, oh God, what's going on now? He picks up and he gets on the phone and says, Dave, I just want to apologize. You didn't know, and I didn't know. I didn't know my players were supposed to be out there bunting. Jim, which was my boss, Jim Trudinich, didn't let me know that the players were going to be over there taking a picture. So when I came out and didn't see them, there was one over there at, and you had them out in the bullpen. That's how I reacted, because they're supposed to be on the field working out. That was the type of guy Jim Leland was. A lot of respect for the man. He was my first manager, but if he knew he did something wrong, he was man enough to come out and say. And being a young photographer, first year, I wasn't sure what to expect. When I was picking up the phone, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. But that's the type of guy Jim is. He's a first-class actor. And when he moved on, you meet people like that, and you're sorry to see him leave. Another quick incident is with Tommy LaRusso. He was a manager for the Dodgers at the time. And the way that it was set up, to get on the field, you had to walk at the same time as the Tigers had to walk up. But then it made a hard left into the dugout. So you couldn't see what was going on in the field. So you always walked up to the edge, and if you heard the crowd roar, you wanted to see if it was the third out or not, you look out into the dugout to see if the players were going onto the field. But what happened was, the day before, Paul Myers, and at the time I didn't know who Paul Myers was, he was a beat writer. I didn't know. He had wrote an article about Tommy, about going crazy in the dugout, throwing stuff all over the place. So I'm standing at the edge of the dugout. I wasn't paying attention how many outs were. I got back up there and I was waiting for the inning to get over. So I'm standing there, and every time I heard something going on the field, I'd look up. They're still sitting there, so back. This went on a couple of times. And all of a sudden, here he comes. He's running down. This man was that far from my face, and I couldn't hear a word he was saying. He was screaming so loud, I didn't know what he was saying. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do now? Because I knew I was allowed to be there, but he was saying I wasn't. So I said, no problem, I'll leave. I walked back down, I walked back up into the other dugout, the Pirates dugout, and there's Jim Leland. What did you do over there? And I'm like, I don't know, but some guy wrote something about him, and I don't know what he was talking about. And here I find out later that Paul Myers had wrote this story. He thought that I was trying to get a picture of him throwing stuff down out of the dugout for the paper. And the next day, came over and found out that I was a team photographer and that I had nothing to do with that. And there's another perfect example of some of these guys that when they're wrong, they, they're man enough to come up and tell you that, he could have just let it go. I was just some photographer. But he came up and apologized, and, the number of times he came in, we always talked a little bit about everything. But you meet players like that, and managers like that. So I had a lot of good experiences with players. Some I didn't, and I'd rather not talk about them. But there's one in particular that will leave out my name. You probably all know what I'm talking about there. An ex-pirate. Yes, he was as bad as most people think he is. And it was funny because it could be, he came back into town one year, and we had 2 ground crew that were killed opening day this year, this 1 year. And they were coming to work, and they were hit by a drunk driver right over in the north side. And in the beginning of the year, myself, Peter and Diana, we put together a print auction. We reached out to all our friends across the country, photographers, to send us images. And we got stuff from Sports Illustrated, Sport Magazine, all across the country, different photographers, whether it was football, baseball, hockey. And as players came in, we would get them autographed. And we had the one, we raised almost $22,000 for the family, because it had no insurance. And so we raised $22,000 for the family. And the only player that refused to sign anything was Barry Bonds. It was just, Barry was, I can tell you good stories about Barry, and I'll tell you one. Barry didn't have to be the way he was. Barry, we're in Philadelphia, my first year, and I'm waiting in line for breakfast, and I didn't notice the bus was going to be leaving in 15 minutes. So Barry walks up in front, and he says, "Dave, come with me. You're going to miss the bus if you wait in this line." So we sat down and we ate when we ate the bus. But he would sit, we would talk to kids. His relationship with kids was better than most of it, with any adults that I knew him with. And for whatever reason, he worked at being standoffish with people. But with kids, he was very good with kids. But that was some of the things that really upset me when I went to Barry, because Barry knew these guys. He was there when they worked there. And every other player, we would shoot them the first day when they could come in and talk to the PR person and get their autographs. And every other person said, "Take as many as you want, sign all you want." But that was one thing about Barry. He could be a nice person, but he worked at being a very bad person. That's my skit on Barry Bonds. Is he probably one of the best players for playing the game? Yeah, he probably is. But as a person, he's not a very good person. One of the funny things that happen to you is when you make mistakes in sports. They seem to linger on. I'm taking a cover shot for our On Deck magazine at the time, and I have Don Slott and Michael Levy, one of the nicest people, both the nicest guys you want to meet. They're obviously they were our catcher and our backup catcher at the time. And I was shooting for our On Deck magazine. We needed a cover shot, and at the time we were shooting film. So I brought up a medium format camera that's a little bit larger negative than what these cameras take. And I get everything set up, tell the guys, "All right, see you out there in 5 minutes." They come out, I have 10 shots on this camera, and that's all I really need for the cover. So I get out there, get in position, got the lights all going, taking a picture, everything's going fine. I said, "All right guys, thanks." And walk back in, pick up the camera, and on the back of the camera you have to crank the back of it to run the rest of the film back. I start cranking, and I start cranking, and I start cranking, and I start cranking, and I'm like, "Oh God, tell me there's film in here." So I'm like, I run back to the dark room, I open it up, and I'm just hoping the film broke or something. Yeah, I have no film in the camera. Yeah. So I go back to the clubhouse, and there's Mike and Don sitting there, and I look at the guys, "Guys, we got to reshoot this." And go, what happened? He goes, and I didn't know what else to say. I said, I didn't have any film to camera. And he looked at me and said, you could have said anything in the world. You had to tell us that you had no film on camera? They did come out and take the picture again. I did have film, but to this day, every time I see those guys, you got film on your camera? Every time. But another thing, the two things in baseball that I worry about in spring training is taking the pictures of all the headshots of all the guys. Because we do it all at one time, and the team picture in August, we usually take it in August. Because you have everybody there, and everybody knows that that's the time you got to do it. Well, out of the 20 years I've done it, 1 year I took the picture, took the team picture, and sent it off to the lab, wait for it to come back, because when we film, you never knew we were going to get until the next day. But the digital cameras are beautiful. You look at the picture, it's there, you know you got it, and you're done. Well, I sent it off to the lab, and I get it back the next day, and they made a print of it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, why is this picture orange? C41 is the process that they use in negative processing. E6 is the process they use in slide processing. Well, they processed my slide film in C41. And I'm like, oh, God. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh, what do I do? I mean, because now you got to tell your boss, my boss, that the picture didn't come out. So that year we weren't playing very well. I think we lost 100 games that year. And nothing ever gets past the writers either. So we take the picture the next day. We figure, well, okay, let's just do it over again and get it done. Well, the day after we take the picture, I'm reading the paper. I'm at home, having my coffee, getting ready to go to work. I'm reading the paper, and there's little Paul Myers, little skid. The season's so bad that they had to take the team picture over again. I'm like, oh, God. With my name in there, it says Dave. Had to take the picture over again. I'm like, oh, Lord. But those are the different things that happen. Thank God the headshots have been pretty good every year. The All-Star games, incredible to be a part of those games. You know, they are so difficult because there's so many people, there's so much prep for them. And once you get to the game, you're like, let's just get it over with. You know, because there's just so much work. But this past in 2006, when we shot it with 17,000 pictures for the week. Between the red carpet events, the fan fest, the game itself, the Heroes game, we shot over 17,000 pictures for that 4 or 5 days. On average, in the beginning of the year, I'll shoot anywhere between 300 to 500 pictures a game, and edit it down to a couple hundred a game. And then from that, we take and separate them into individual folders for players, for the different events that the Power carried. You saw some of the stuff at the Parrot, some of the stuff at on the outside of the ballpark, aerial photography. One thing about this job, I was able to do a lot of different photography. One of the things you don't expect to do is go up in a plane, fly around and take pictures of the ballpark. That's part of my job. I go up every couple of years and get different views of the ballpark. Going on top of rooftops in the city of Pittsburgh, that's a different experience. That's something you don't really, those buildings up there, I mean, you're how many floors? But the neat thing about, the thing I never knew about is, once you got up there, you're safe as can be, because the way they build them up there is, it's got a 4-foot wall. You're standing 4 foot below the top of the roof, and the hard thing about it is because a lot of the roofs are 3 feet wide. And so you're trying to get a wide angle shot, you got to get up on something, lean over, try to get the right shot. Keep it tied off so you don't let them fall off. But it's different things and different situations you get in that are really, it's year to year, you never know what's going to happen. But the camera equipment has changed over the years. The digital cameras, I love them. You've got a Polaroid with every picture you take. I have interns that come in and I teach them a lot of different things. One thing that the interns usually don't know anything about is flash photography. And so I said, everybody got a flash? And, oh, no, what do you need a flash for? You're shooting outside all the time. Well, the problem with shooting baseball, everybody's got a baseball cap. And as soon as you got that, you got a shadow over here. So you can't see their eyes. And that's to shoot fans, shoot different things like that, and everybody's got caps on. So, and they go out, and I say, go ahead, go out and shoot. And I never go with them. And they always wonder why I never go with them. I want them to do what they're going to do on their own. So when they come back, I can see the way they shoot, and they can say, okay, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, and this is why you need to do it. But so if I was there, they wouldn't make these mistakes. So when they come back, we'll check it out, look at it. There's a lot of things that I send them out to do, I know we can do more once. So it's a good learning experience for them. So, and then when they go on and take that picture with a flash, and they bring out the shadows under the eyes, now that's the picture you're looking at. A lot of things, the cameras take two-dimensional pictures. We see in three dimensions. So you have to create the pictures to look like three dimension. And that's part of it. Flash photography is a big part of what I do. And most kids coming out of school don't realize that. And even the schools don't teach it enough. One thing that the artists do, they'll always send me questionnaires about, what do you see? And I always send back in big print, flash, flash, flash. And a lot of the kids, I get interns from Slippery Rock, University of Pittsburgh, the Art Institute. This year I have 2 interns this year. A gentleman came in, he was a retired teacher, 65 years old, and he went back to school for photography. So I didn't, they send their resume in, and I call him and said, come on in. So he walked in, and I'm like, I'm going down to 24 hours where we meet him, and I see this older guy standing there, and I'm thinking, oh, the intern must not be here yet. But you're expecting, some young kid coming out of school. Well, Phil introduces himself. I said, oh, Bill, okay. Why don't you come on in? We talked. He showed me his portfolio. It looked very good. I mean, it was like, okay. And so I went back up after he left. I had 4 or 5 other people to interview. And I thought, okay, I'd like to have Bill do this, but I also want a younger kid. So I went back up to HR, and they said, yeah, sure. As long as you get credit for it, no problem. Well, we've nicknamed Bill Blue from the movie Old School. Because I don't know if anybody's familiar with the movie Old School, but there was an older gentleman, and it was about these young guys who started a frat house. And Blue is the older gentleman who dies in the movie, unfortunately. So I told Bill, I says, I'm taking you on, but you better not die on me. He looked at me and said, I think I'll be okay. I said, okay. So the first day he comes in, and I start doing what I normally do. And it was about a week into it, and Bill always has a question. And the first thing I told Bill, I said, ask me as many questions as you want, as many times as you want. Because if you don't ask, and you do it wrong, well then we got to correct it. So if you're in the middle of something, do it. So every morning he'd come in, he'd start asking questions. I'm like, okay, no problem. So about a week goes by, and he goes, it was at the end of the day, and he looked at me and goes, Dave, I understand why you said that I can't die on this job. And I said, why? Bill? He goes, because you have more energy than anybody I know. You get here, and you've got 10 people on the phone. You're going from the front office to here, to there, to over to there, back to the outfield, back into here to do this, back up onto the 4th floor to do another shoot, back onto the other place to do one more thing. And by the end of the day, I'm worn out. So he gets done, and I said, Bill, you okay? He goes, oh, I'm fine, because he'll have his back to me. I had my back to him because he works on my computer. And all of a sudden, everyone's out here, I'm thinking, what's going on back there? And I look over, and I said, Bill, you okay? He goes, yeah, I'm fine. I'm just frustrated. I said, okay, good. So the season starts out. He was in for about a week when the season started out. Season starts out, and he has a 20-game plan for the Penguins. And my other intern, obviously, is a big hockey fan also. So the one day it was going to be cold, wet, rainy outside, and I thought, man, I don't want these guys to go out here. Penguin game was on. It was going to be on first playoff game was going to be on TV. And so they all walk in. Bill and Brock walks in, and they're ready to go out and sit in the rain, whatever. And so they get in there and said, okay, guys, we're working on the computer all night tonight. And they looked at me like, oh man, aren't we going to shoot? I said, no, we got to work. You got to shoot. You got to work on the computer. You work on this computer, and you work on my computer. So I leave. I go out and shoot. I come back. Game's over. They had the Penguin game on. so I said, "What'd you learn tonight?" He looked at me like, "What do you mean what did I learn tonight?" And I said, "Well, what'd you learn tonight?" And Bill's always the first one to speak up. He goes, "Well, I learned that so-and-so is, we can do this, we move this here, move that there, move this there." And I said, "Okay." I looked at Brock and said, "What'd you learn tonight?" "Well, because it's pretty mundane what they were doing. They were just moving files from here to there, but hadn't done." And Brock said, "Well, everything is not shooting action." I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "But didn't you learn that I take care of my interns?" And they looked at me and they said, "Why?" I said, "Didn't you get to watch the Penguin game tonight?" And they all looked at me like, "Oh yeah, okay." So they got their work done, they got to see the game, I got to do my stuff. And it's good to treat them right, because they do a lot of work. And that's part of what I try to teach those guys too, is that, you know, there are some of the mundane things you got to do. I had my first intern. At that time I was shooting film. And I would go through the film, we'd go through 20, 30, 40, 50 rolls of film. And I'd go out and click the shots that I didn't want, and he got the film, cut it up, put it in the sheets. So I said, let's get this done. And he said, okay. So I leave him in there 2-3 days. And he'd just sit there and cut the film up. So I started feeling bad for him. I think, man, you gotta have to shoot. So I said, let's go out and shoot. He goes, well, no, I still got 2 or 3 more films to get done. I said, don't you want to go out and shoot? He goes, well, of course, yeah, but you know, Dave, when I'm cutting these pictures up, I'm looking at all your pictures. I'm looking to see how you shoot, what kind of angles you're shooting. And I looked at him and said, that's what I want to see in photography. Because now he took a mundane job and he learned from it. He took that job and made the best of it. He put the things together. Instead of just taping them together and getting frustrated, he was looking at the images and understanding the way I shoot. And today, right now, he's doing landscapes right now. He was working for a newspaper out, and he graduated school and was working out in East, in the Poconos with a newspaper. And then he took another job. He always wanted to work in the national parks. So he took another job out in Montana, rebuilding the national trails out there. And along with doing that, he does these unbelievable landscapes. And but I knew he was going to be a photographer. Just right at that point was that, you know, he took something that, you know, it's an everyday thing. Something has to be done, and you get it done. But he learned from that. So I tell that story to all my interns to let them understand there's things that have to be done. And sometimes they're not exciting. You know, you think of sports, you go out and shoot. You shoot your, you know, get your great action shots. And it is fun. It is neat because when we're in our photo pits shooting, well, the other guys in there will always look at each other's shots. Some guys get them, some guys don't. I mean, we could be standing right next to each other, and this guy's going to get one shot, and we're going to miss it. It's because the guy running on first base is going to be in front of me, and he's not going to be in front of the guy next to him. So it's not an easy job to do consistently. Everybody can take pictures. There's no doubt about that. We all can get good shots, and we all can do it. And part of the thing is getting consistent shots all the time, in whatever weather you're in. Part of the thing with the new equipment, it's great for us older guys. It's autofocus. It saves me a lot. And you just got to learn how to play with it a little bit more. The equipment, most of the equipment's mine. When I first started, all the equipment was mine. And then when we moved into digital photography, the Pirates ended up buying the bodies. The lenses are still all mine. But the whole other part of the aspect is pretty unique. I've been to every stadium except for the Astrodome because it was always indoors. We could do that here. When we moved into PNC Park, it was like, I didn't believe. It was like a road game every day. Because going from Three Rivers to PNC, there were so many different angles that you could shoot from. And every picture you took was always a different background. And at Three Rivers, when we were there, you know, you had the concrete wall, you had the alpha wall, you had the plastic grass, and it was Three Rivers Stadium. It was a football field. And the PNC Park is gorgeous. You got natural grass, guys diving in the outfield, grass is coming up, dirt's flying up, come up, grass stains all over them. That's baseball. And place to play, you know, you didn't have a brown area astroturf to make it look like it was supposed to be dirt. But you know, it was neat to go through Three Rivers to shoot there, and but it was nice to move into PNC Park. I'm sure most of you people probably have been at PNC Park. And no, never been there.
Last time it's in Park was back in '88.
Okay.
So then got thrown out of the game.
When was the first time? How do you want that? Well, Jimmy had a knack like that. That's probably why I got thrown out of the game. But you know, it's a great sport, as you guys all know. I'm sure with the league that you guys are in, you all have a lovely game. I'm sure a lot of you probably already played the game when you're younger, even now. For 20 years I've been doing it, and it's a lot of fun. There's so much fun that you can have with this game that it's a job, but it's a job I love, and it's one of those things where the hours don't really matter anymore. We're there all the time. It seems like, you know, when I give somebody my number, it's my office number because you're never going to get me home. But people say, why do you work so long? And even Bill said, how do you stand being here all those hours? I said, well, I mean, it's part of the game. It's part of being a part of baseball. And it's not a job. I document history, and that's why I like doing this. It's documenting history. It's baseball history, and even with the team doing bad, there's a lot of different things that happen. And you take it piece by piece and kind of throw out the other stuff. I can't make them win. I can make it look like they win, but I can't make them win. But my job is to make it look like they win. So I think I do a pretty good job. And a lot of other people think I do a pretty good job. That's it. Any questions?
Just a couple of more interesting players from the house.
Now, today, Andrew, he's a really neat guy. Yeah, gotcha. He's a really neat guy. He has a good head on his shoulder. I don't think we're going to get a lot of bad publicity from this guy. He seems to be the type he was raised well. I watch tomorrow. He'll be out there, some cross or something. But he just seems like a really good head on shoulder. I think he was great for Lastings. And when Lasting came to the team, there was a lot of bad publicity about him. He was with three other teams before he came with us in a very short amount of time. He had a lot of talent, but he had a lot of promise too. But I think Lastings learned a lot from Andrew in just a short amount of time. And you can't get them apart like brothers. And he was very good for him. And I think between the two guys, we're going to see a lot of exciting things out of it as the years go on. I just hope they don't get rid of it. I don't got that control. I can't worry about that. And but I think the way from what I hear from management, and I know, you know, we're losing right now, and I know that. But I think they're just taking their knocks right now, and they're buying their time with the younger guys that they acquire to bring them up. Well, John Ross will be our manager for a while. I don't know. But there's different things to happen. But I think right now they have that nucleus that's going to hopefully, and I know we've all heard it before. I've heard it as many times as you guys heard it. And I hope in 3 years that we start moving players out. But I don't think we will. I think they made a commitment to these younger guys to bring them up and to kind of buy time right now to get through this hard time. I don't know. That's good.
All the Pirates you met in your 20 years, which one did you admire the most?
Willie Stargell, without a doubt. He was my childhood.
So was me.
Yeah. I mean, it was so neat to be able to be a co-worker with him. You know, he was with us for a few years that I was.
Chicken on the hill.
Oh, yeah. But it was, you know, Willie loved photography. We'd sit and talk photography all the time. We'd be in the dugout, and we'd sit there and talk about photography all the time. But the one thing about, I don't know, a lot of people already know about Willie, he whittled a lot. And he'd make all these little different things out of wood. He'd sit there and whittle while he's talking. But he was a great guy. I really liked him. Towards the end, when he was ill, you know, he got a little bit of a bad rap because he didn't seem like he was talking to a lot of people. Don spring training would always be in the car, and he'd be away from a lot of people. I remember going to a banquet with him, and it was a coaching banquet. And so he was talking about coaching and different things. And one of the guys, younger guy, got up and said, "Hey, can you give us a big spin wheel one more time?" And Willie looked at him and said, "I would love to, but I can't raise my arms above my shoulders because the shoulders were in such bad shape." And but you know, he sat down and talked to the guy. Man, the guy knew baseball. He knew baseball so well. He'd sit there and talk to the players in spring training for hours and just talk about wrist action and how you anticipate all the little tiny things about baseball. But Willie, I mean, I loved the guy. He was great. I mean, as a kid growing up, you know, I was a right-handed hitter, changed to lefty, so I batted both ways. And he just and I'm standing in the office one day, and I'm doing something in the shadow boxes because I took care of all the memorabilia stuff. And all of a sudden, somebody walks in the door, and I hear Willie Stargell's voice. Oh my God, that's Willie Stargell. I look around, I'm looking for him. I couldn't see him. Well, at the time, he was sick. He was so thin, and I didn't recognize it was Willie Stargell. And I thought, oh my God. But you know, and that's when he came back to the team. Unfortunately, we didn't have him for so many years. And, yeah, and he would have been such a great addition, and he was when he was here. And unfortunately, I mean, he died on opening day. Yeah. For him, it was probably the greatest thing in the world.
The first Pirate game I saw was back in '73 in my Keys. He had a home run in the game. They lost the game, but it was nice to witness it.
Oh yeah, yeah. But you know, Willie was probably one of the best guys. Jim Gott was a great guy to be around. Jason Kendall, I had great conversations with Jason Kendall. A lot of people didn't like him for certain things. And look, Jason was kind of Jason is, you know, he still is that way a little bit. You know, you have to get to know the guy. And with today's publicity of everything, you know, the guys are a little bit more on the defense before they, you know, settle in and talk to you and sit down and talk to you. I went out fishing with him a couple times. And he came back from baseball. Man, he was a great guy. But at times, you know, he'd be kind of standoffish around the ballpark. New people around. I wasn't sure what they were like. And but Jason's a really good guy. I mean, I saw him when he was in the minor leagues coming up, and see him develop into a decent player, good player, team leader at times. And you know, towards the end there, you know, it got to be rough for him. And coming back was interesting when he came back with the different teams he came back with. Other players. R.J. Reynolds, back in the '90s, great guy. Right now he's out in California. He has a youth home.
Yes.
And he works with troubled kids and broken homes. He was with he was here at fantasy camp for 1 year, and you know, he was still working there. He had somebody, young gentleman, call him and have him brought over home, and he stopped what he did, stopped what he was doing, and took the time out. Said, you know, guys, I gotta get over there, I gotta deal with this. And you know, Jay Reynolds, other guys, they did so many different things. Stan Belinda. All right, okay, everybody blames Stan Belinda, right? You know, right now he owns a farm. He has MS. He's dealing with that quite well. He was just back at the ballpark last year for a home autograph session. Another good guy. That you know, things happen, and the public part of him, you know, gets kind of tainted. You know, Doug Dravic was one of the nicest guys you ever want to meet. I mean, good guy, family guy. It was so neat because the last year when his kids got drafted, I remember his little kids were running around in our office, you know, and here his son's getting drafted to play Major League Baseball. Tony Womack was a neat guy. Chico Lean, oh my God, there was a crazy guy right there. I remember in the middle of the dugout, in the middle of the clubhouse in spring training, he had a tent. That was his locker. We used to have two big picnic tables. And one morning we walk in, there's a tent over top of it, and there's Chico. They made that his locker for the spring. It was like, oh my God. He came out one day with a machete, you know, just fooling around, and stay away from my locker. You know, he was doing all kinds of stuff, but it was funny. Other guys, Jeff King was very quiet. Jeff King, we knew that he would do the game of baseball when he was done, and if that meant it was 1 ball, 2 strikes in the middle of a doubleheader, and he decided he was done playing, he was going to leave the game of baseball. And basically, that's what he did. When he left Kansas City, he was done. He left the middle game. So we kind of knew that was going to happen. You know, it's different guys. It's neat. Some of the other guys on other teams. Jason Schmidt, when he was with us, and then he moved on to San Francisco, had a great relationship with him and his family. Different guys, you know, you keep in touch. And now, some of the guys that you start out with Doug, Don, Michael Dyer, those guys in the early 90s, they come back to fantasy camp. Or with Michael Lavalier, he has a home in Bradenton. Every once in a while, when I'm down there, I'll stop in and say hi, we'll sit on the porch, have a beer, and talk about different things. And so because you see their families when they were young, you know, I mean, his daughter was born in Pittsburgh, his son, you know, they were just little kids. Now they're grown. But it's like anything else. When you're, you know, in that situation for 20 years, there's a lot of other different things that come about, and it's just not baseball. You get to meet and have good relations with good people. Any other questions?
How much is your cameras costing in July?
The larger lens is about $8,000. The camera at the other end of it is about $5,000. So we walk around the field with a small car on our shoulder. So the bodies, this body here is one of the cheaper ones. That's about $1,500. That's $5,000. That's $2,500. The lens is about $1,000. The other smaller lens is about $1,000. So yeah, I mean it's expensive, but it's like anything else. You got to have the tools to do the trade. And one thing, when I went to the Art Institute in Pittsburgh, when I first got there, I told them I just wanted to do sports, and they said, "Well, you can graduate." I was just talking to college kids the other day, and they were okay. It was a media day, and I was just telling them, I asked if there was any photographers in the class, and there was 2 or 3 of them there. And I told them the story that I went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and you know, the advisors are there, telling the class, you got to take this, that, and everything. So I just want to learn how to shoot. I just want to learn how to take pictures. I said, I don't care. At that time, I was 28 years old. I went back to school late. And 27 years old. I went to school late. And I wasn't worried about getting a degree. But as it turns out, I got my degree. But I went through school with one thing in mind. I wanted to be a sports photographer. So everything I did, every class I took, whatever it was sports oriented. Our still lifes, I shot golf clubs. Our slideshows at that time, now would be PowerPoint, but at that time, slideshows. Friends of mine were motocross. They went out and shot motocross. The only thing I didn't do was the how-to stuff. And that's when I relied on my carpentry. I rebuilt a fireplace. I did a how-to like that, step by step. But everything else I did was all my classes. All my classes were, you know, they were basic classes, but I took the sports version of it and made it work with it. And my one class was video, and I didn't want to be a videographer. So I did the classes, I made my A's and B's and stuff like that, but I didn't really care about it, you know. So when we had to take our test, we had to graduate, and we had to take our video classes, and we had to pass that. So I took the class 3 times, took the test 3 times, and the teacher knew that I did all the projects, he did everything he asked for. He came up to me one day, he goes, Dave, I'm going to give you the test differently. Some people don't test well by writing things down. So I'm going to give it to you verbally. And so the test started out, I use Canon cameras. I've used them all my life. And the connection on one video was a Canon connection. So he goes, all right, Dale, I'm going to start you out with the test, and this is the way it's going to go. I said, okay. So, but he goes, make one promise before you take this test. And I said, what is it? He goes, never, ever take a video job. No problem, no chance I was ever going to do that. I still haven't done any video. So he goes, all right, what's this connection? And I look, and he goes, I don't know. He goes, what kind of camera you use, Dave? And I said, Canon. He goes, yeah, that's right. That's the way the whole test went. So I passed. But he knew that I wasn't going to do any video. And he knew that I did the work for him. And I just didn't pay attention enough. And he passed me. So that was one credit. Leon always, when I go back to art school every once in a while, he's no longer there, but I tell that story every he's a good guy. But any other questions?
Dave, I have two young sons that play. I'm taking pictures. I bought a camera because you told me to. Is there any certain angle for an amateur that someone never took a class? I've been getting some great pictures with it. Is there anything that you have done in your life that that might be something that someone can do to tell them to take some good shots?
One thing I was taught is shoot tight. And you think it's tight enough, shoot tighter. And what that means is and that's what I tell my interns. When you use your equipment, don't overextend your equipment. Okay? Get the shots that will work within the realm of what that lens is used for. Okay? This telephoto lens is used, I use this lens for anywhere from mid-outfield to right in front of me. Okay? Mid-outfield, I got a full body. Right in front of me, I'll get a full face. And that's what I mean. When you shoot tight, shoot tighter. It's one thing that was taught to me. My 200 millimeter lens. I know that I can't shoot the outfield with that lens. So don't even bother shooting the outfield. Shoot the stuff that's close to you. With what type of camera?
Canon, Rebel,
Lens? 200 millimeter. You get pretty close to the field. And we get those short. Baseball, stay around first base. That's why the number one position in baseball is first base. Everything's thrown to first base. Everything that first initially happens comes to first base. Runner runs to first base. Pitcher throws home. If there's a guy on first base, he looks at first base. Everybody in the infield gets hit to him, they throw to first base. So the main position in baseball is first base. That's the number. If there's only one photographer covering the game, they shoot at first base. If you have more than that, you spread them out. That's the main position because everybody throws to you. So for high school baseball, stay right around first base. Go throw for it. 200 millimeter will get you a nice shot from there. Get an extender if you can. With the newer cameras, the ISO, which determines the amount of light that it takes to do it, raise them up. The old saying, stay low. Stay at 100, stay at 200 ASA or ISO, depending on what you look at. I shoot these cameras at 5,000 ISA and get spectacular shots out of them. I don't even worry about that anymore. I mean, in digital photography, it's called noise. In film, it's called grain. So with these newer cameras, they've devised a way to get rid of noise. And that's those little things you see sparkling in the pictures. And it kind of breaks it up, makes it look fuzzy. But with the newer cameras, you don't even have to worry about it. I tell my interns, go out and shoot 2,500 ASA, go out and shoot 5,000 ASA. In spring training, we have our eye doctors, pitch black in the room. And they're looking into the guy's eye with a little thing that lights up, looks in their eye. I'm shooting at 5,000. I got the room lit up. It looks like daylight in there. And I got this shot of this doctor looking into the eye, and that eye is just as sharp as can be. Years ago, you would never see his eye just because of the noise or the grain in the camera, in the film. So a lot of times, back when I started, you wanted to shoot as low. That's why Kodachrome 64 was the best film had, because the grain was so tight. It looked so natural. Now with these cameras, they made ways to eliminate a lot of that stuff. Anything else? Did that answer?
Yeah. One other question I was going to do is a follow-up. Did you ever take a picture where an umpire was a call and you took like a series of photos and it proved that the umpire looked at the umpire?
Never.
I just wonder if they ever send those into the league.
No, it's umpires got rough. They really do. I mean, that's why they got to make their decision. Sometimes they get it right, they're human. Sometimes they get it right, sometimes they get it wrong. And we're shooting at, 2-3 thousandths of a second. and they're looking at the picture, they're looking at it live, happening, and we're I've never, the only time any of my pictures ever went back to the lake was in football with the Steelers, and it was in Baltimore, and wide receiver, I can't remember who it was, one of the wide receivers were on the ground, and who's the Ravens cornerback, Ray Lewis, I think it was, and he literally was going to step on his head, was going to jump on his head. And I had a series of shots where he came up to him, jumped up, and came down on his helmet. And the Steelers wanted that and sent that to him. That's the only series of shots of that. But I told Mike Favis about it. Because it was a pretty bad situation. And I just happened to take a picture of it. So I told Mike, I said, Mike, hey, look at these pictures, do you want this stuff? He said, oh yeah, we'll send that to Blake. And I don't know whatever came up out of it, but it was like 8 or 9 pictures. I just shot it for whatever, I was just taking it was part of the thing to shot. And I looked at it and said, my God, he did it intentionally. And that was the only time. In baseball, no. I've gone up and showed, well, here's one thing that did happen. You go back to the league, but went back to the pitching coach. One of our pitchers was showing his pitch, but it was only for a split second before so the batters could see the pitch before it happened. And I looked at it and said, well, that shouldn't be happening for whatever reason. I didn't think that was right. So I went to the pitching coach and I said, here, look at this picture. And he looked, as soon as he looked at it, he said, oh my God, he's showing this pitch before he throws it. And they changed it. They changed the angle of what whichever, I can't remember who it was, but he was getting hit pretty hard. And they couldn't, for whatever reason, on the videotape you couldn't see it, but I just took the right picture and it showed he was throwing a curveball. And wherever it was in his windup, you could see it. And so the pitching coach made an adjustment. He's a Cy Young winner. No. But yeah, I did show them, and they thought that was pretty interesting, so they worked on it. But no, nothing ever went back to the league outside of the football thing.
Take a shot at the Bill Tower shoved into the referee's pocket.
What's that?
Bill Tower.
No, I didn't do that. I think Mike Favis has it, actually. I think he was there when it happened. But no, I didn't do that. I didn't get that shot.
Have you ever met Big Ben?
I met Ben, yeah.
What's he like?
It's a little standoffish. But, he had a lot. I met him early when he won Rookie of the Year and Jason Bay won Rookie of the Year. We had to take a picture of the two of them together. He was a little bit standoffish, but, it's weird. I mean, these guys have so much pressure on them. And me as a team photographer, I get upset when they try to pull a lot of that stuff from me. Outside, I understand it in a way. You don't have to be rude about it, But in some ways, I mean, those guys, whatever they do, the moment they do something wrong, it's caught. And I ain't talking about the situation Ben's in now. I'm not talking about that. Whatever happened there is there. But I'm talking about in general, players we have classes for the players. The Pirates have classes for players to teach them how to deal with the media. Because you have to. Not that the media is bad. I'm just saying, you have to watch what you say. I almost lost my job the first year I was with the team. I was trying to figure out, what happened was Bobby Bonilla was in some contract dispute with the team. And he wouldn't sit and get his headshot done for us. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. So Pete Diana obviously was the photographer for me. I was his assistant. So I called him up, and he was working for the Post-Gazette. I said, Pete, what do you do? He said, you got to wait him out. Just wait him out. I said, okay. So about a week later, the team's in Atlanta. One of the reporters come up to Bobby Bonilla and said, I understand that you won't take a headshot for the team photographer. I'm like, it caught Bobby off guard. Well, I didn't know anything about it. And I get a call into the office from my boss. And so I'm sitting in his office and I'm like, okay, Dave, did you say anything to anybody about anything? That's the way he posed the question to me. I'm like, I don't think so. But I don't know what the question was. I thought he was kidding around with me. And did you say anything about Bobby not sitting for you for getting a headshot? And I started thinking, yeah, me and Pete were talking about it. And Pete worked for him for 3 years before that. But what happened was, he looked at me and goes, Dave, I'm telling you this right now. whatever happens within the ballpark doesn't go anywhere past the ballpark. And he says, I could fire you for that, but I'm not going to because it's your first year. And I said, fine. So I learned a valuable lesson is, I'm talking to Pete, and what happened with Pete, he was the new guy on the block with the Post-Gazette, and they had a brainstorming session about what was going on. He had mentioned that, Bobby wouldn't sit for me for a job here when, they cornered Bobby in Atlanta, and the next thing I know, I'm getting called to the office, I'm just getting fired over it. So I called Pete and said, what's going on? And that's when he explained what happened there. But yeah, I mean, you gotta watch what you say. Myself, I have to watch what I say too. And to this day, I don't know anybody ain't worth it, tell the truth.
Well, I think that one Tyler Calico that played football was it for Titter somebody or?
Okay.
One of the major high schools and used the up.
Yeah. Yeah. That'll happen. Don't want it to happen, but it'll happen. Anybody else? Okay.
Give Dave a round of applause.
I have a lot of Dave's work displayed at my house. I've been the subject of some of Dave's work, and no, I did not break the camera. We need to have a short business meeting. Tom, you can, as our outgoing president.
Actually, just a short discussion on the All-Star game. Can you elaborate on that?
Okay, next week, All-Star game here. Every team send 3 players, and each division is going to play against another division. Yeah, sure. Glenn will figure out which divisions are playing each other.
Okay.
Okay. We send 3 players per team. And then the winning teams will play each other again. So you could be playing 6 games that night. Do we want to start at 7 o'clock? Yeah. Okay. So we'll start at 7 o'clock next week. The following week, 1 player per team, we're playing Mount Pleasant, and that'll be here. We'll start that at 7:30. Anybody that's on the board gets to grandfather in as your team rep. That's why Jack keeps wanting to be president, so he gets to represent his team. So that's pretty much how we're going to talk about it. I brought stuff for the raffle, but it's getting late. I'll just save it for next year. Anything else? Okay. Is Neil around to do a? Dave was worried he would sit down and my ass was 20 minutes. Remember you did that.
Speaker. That's right. Could be a teacher. Well, he is. Yeah, he is.
Today's message comes from John chapter 3. It'll be about 2 hours long. Thank you, Father, for the beautiful day and the fellowship of good men and good friends. We enjoy the competition and the dart ball, but more than that, we enjoy just being around each other, because we expect to spend eternity together because of your graciousness. Father, would you keep your hand on each of us tonight, give us safety to our homes, and I pray that you make us a blessing in our churches and a blessing in our community. We ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. God bless you guys.
Very carefully.